As we continue into warmer days, many people might be opening up some summer living space and might not like what they find waiting for them. So joining us here on Studio 10 to talk us through it is Zack Krieger. Welcome to Studio 10, Zack.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so many homeowners are starting to open up their cottage for the season, but they might find an unexpected surprise. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think when most homeowners that go out to that cottage to open it up for the first time might get that nasty smell, musty odor. They might walk in and feel some bouncing floors. There's really no telling what they might find, but I can tell you one thing. Being with Ayers for the last 13 years, there's all kinds of surprises lurking when you go to open that cottage for the first time.
Well, many cottages are built with crawl spaces here in Michigan. Can you explain what a crawl space is and why many cottages seem to have them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I think of a crawl space, I really just think of a short basement, right? Same type of construction. It could be a block or poured wall. Basically, it could be a dirt or concrete floor. Most of the time on cottages, you're going to see a lot of dirt floors. And basically, they just run the joist systems right on top, just like they would with a basement. They just make it a lot shorter. And the reason for that, typically on a cottage, most of them are built in and around bodies of water. And so as they were beginning to build those structures, they realized, wow, we're hitting water very quickly. So we need to get down, not quite so far, get that footing laid down so that we're not underneath the water and start building from there. So typically we see anything from 1 block crawl spaces all the way up to 2 or 3 feet tall in most cases.
Okay, so if my cottage smells like mold or mildew, would that be because of my crawl space?
Most likely. I think one of the things that most homeowners don't think about, there's a scientific terminology for this called the stack effect. And what we know about the stack effect is that 50% of your air is actually moving from the bottommost space up to the top, and that's basically what you're breathing. And so if you can imagine, your crawl space is sucking in outside air, whether it's through vents or through the construction materials. You can never seal that air out 100%. And so as that air comes in from the outside, when it's really, really warm out, it's condensing into that cool space, and it's causing rot, mold, mildew, typically odors, and you're breathing that air coming upstairs. So you can imagine opening that front door, being really excited about getting into your cottage, only to be, surprised, like you said, by that musty odor.
And if I ignore the warning signs of crawl space issues, what might happen?
Well, I think understanding what those issues are is really, the first step, right? So there's a couple things going on that we address that we believe are going to help solve those situations permanently. So the first thing to think about is there water down in the crawl space? Most people think of their crawl space as like a dark, scary, cobwebs. I'm not sure if I want to go down there, lots of spiders. And we understand why, right? A lot of those spaces, they smell bad, they're tiny to get into. A lot of times you're gonna work your way into a lot of mud and just uncomfortable situations. So we really need to think about that water situation. The second thing is, what are the building materials looking like down there? Most of these cottages were built back in the early 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so you can imagine if those building materials have been susceptible to rot and mold and mildew for 40, 50, 60 years, you can imagine that they've been taking, a lot of that moisture in, and there's a lot of structural damage that can occur over that time. The last thing that we really want to contemplate is moisture in the air, and I'm not sure people think a lot about that as well. So there's a difference between, water, standing water, pools of water, and then moisture in the air. And so I talked about condensation earlier. That's a big thing. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to isolate that home from the earth and really make sure that we're, getting all that outside air from even coming into the crawl space. So there's a lot of things that are going on in that crawl space environment that you need to take into consideration. But really the first step is to make sure that you're educated on what's the current condition of the crawl space, getting a look down there, obviously giving us a call so we can give you a professional opinion, and we're happy to do that. So those are some things to consider as you're opening up the cottage for the first time this year.
All right, Zack, thank you so much for sharing those tips to help keep our cottage clean and smelling fresh. And stick around, there is more of Studio 10 after the break.